Yeah, 7 movies in. That's insane, even for a horror franchise. Admittedly, they've remained slightly consistent. So is Scream 7 warranted? Excuse me. Hello?
Hi, Austin. Do you like scary movies?
Wrong number. I can't.
Why? That's right.
So Kevin Williamson directed this film. He's the writer of the original Scream. He co-wrote this movie. You've got, obviously, the return of several fan favorites, a.k.a. main characters. That's why they're fan favorites. Neve Campbell, Courtney Cox, and of course Neve was in Scream 5, wasn't present for Scream 6, which they reference in this film. Courtney Cox feels like a regular for these movies now, but obviously those two on screen together within these lead roles, along with Sidney's daughter, Tatum. Kind of know where that name comes from. Isabel May plays Tatum. Joel McHale has a prominent role. And then you've got the return of some other characters that it felt like they tried to squeeze in at the last second, like Mason Gooding and company, to where the rewrites, and this is where I want to start, we'll dive into the plot here in a second, are very evident. And if you don't know, we moved on from Melissa Barrera, Jenna Ortega. They're characters from the last 2 movies. Admittedly, I was a fan of those storylines, and so I look at this thinking there is a gaping hole here to where you're kind of wondering why they're not at least included if the likes of Mindy and Chad are here. And so obviously what happened behind the scenes, whatever your opinion may be, we're going to separate that from this review because unfortunately the story has moved on, but just as its own kind of separate entity, even though it includes characters from all realms of the Scream universe in a way that almost feels very Avengers Endgame-y. Plenty of characters, franchises, movies have attempted to replicate that kind of success where you bring all of these really cool things, these fan favorite moments, some would call it fan service, your cameos, whatever it may be, and you insert it to get people excited, to get fans their blood pumping as they're watching the movie. And I will say, watching this at the early fan screening, 30 minutes earlier than the regular screening, I got my money's worth. The audience was very into this, and they were reacting in a similar-ish way, obviously not as excited, to the likes of, watching No Way Home on screen and seeing Toby and Andrew show up. People were really pumped, and I'm not saying the moments we get are as big as that. I'm just saying sometimes there are nods and lines and line delivery that will get people fired up and occasionally overlook the flaws of said film. Now, admittedly, I do think Scream 7 delivers on plenty of what it's trying to do. It's the same type of formulaic story, except this time we start out at the OG house, and now it's kind of been turned into a museum of sorts. You've got the props and the phone call and the books. But the way this movie starts out is on a very bloody an intense note. That was really cool. I liked the opening scene quite a bit. Admittedly, Matt and Tyler's direction for the prior 2 films felt kind of slick and new, just the look and the feel of that. It did go back a little bit to the old school, not entirely, but look, feel. The score has some of those similar notes, and it felt very almost late 90s, early 2000s coded in certain ways, which was interesting, but again, it had that familiar feeling to it. Then you've got Neve Campbell returning to screen as our titular, our title hero. She's getting the phone calls. She's just like, whatever. But there's still this part of her. She's locking the door. She's got the security cameras, doing everything she can to protect her daughter, not even getting her ready for the fight, say something happens down the road, because she doesn't want her to have anything to do with that or her old life. She won't reveal anything from her past. Of course, she knows all of this about her mother because of the movies and the books, but Sidney ain't saying nothing. So you start to get into the kills, some of them generic, but admittedly, there are a few moments here kind of scaling around the inside of their home. There's a moment at a bar that was extremely cool. One kill that I won't even say what it is, but I'm like, I have never seen that in a horror movie before. So that is interesting. But the plot, as I was watching and kind of digesting what was going on, admittedly, there are probably more culprits here than I expected. And of course, you have the breaking the fourth wall of, we know exactly. Well, I mean, at one point, Mason Gooding's character's like, nah, I'm not going in there. I don't want to get stabbed tonight. Like all of these things, because it's a very meta type of experience, as every Scream movie has been. And I kept thinking to myself, I think they're just running out of things to do that feel original, because nothing about this movie feels original. And then you have these new added moments in this movie where technology is playing a role. Admittedly, some of the moments are great, like when one character is trying to direct another character using security cam footage on where to go and what to do while, you've got somebody trying to step. That was great. I really enjoyed that. But then there are other things, like one of our characters keeps receiving a FaceTime call from someone who's trying to feel ominous and creepy, and the performance is good. But the way that they go about the FaceTime call is just kind of stepping back from the camera, and then it doesn't really look like it's an actual... And there's a reason why it looks so funky, but there's also this thing that felt very, cheesy to how serious it's taking itself in that moment, even though this movie does play on a lot of things. It felt like the videos you see when you're getting on a ride at Disney World. It was just... Obviously, those two actors are not talking to each other. It's not a FaceTime call. This was pre-recorded, and they're adding it just felt very poorly put together in that way. And I felt that way about a few moments in this film where something is spelled out or, told to us beforehand to think one way, but I'm sitting back going, okay, obviously it's not going to play out like that. And those are opportunities for the film to almost take advantage of and try to be creative in a way that doesn't feel totally predictable. Now, once you get to the third act, and admittedly, there are some great moments with characters. The whole town is locked down. There's a curfew, right? And so when people are running and screaming, nobody is there to help them. It's like all of those little nuggets in Scream 7 are great. And I like the added detail to allow us to really feel some of these kills and the intensity of our characters running from Ghostface, which was awesome, right? But there are other times, especially when you hit the third act, where we start to get some of these reveals, and then inevitably the big one at the end, it's not a spoiler, all of the Scream movies have the big reveal. So you're going to know who Ghostface was. Unsatisfying. I mean, that's the one part of the film where I look back and I'm like, if they would have nailed the final reveal, I could have forgiven some of these other flaws that had me a little frustrated as I was watching. I was still somewhat entertained, and I do think the OG cast, they're giving good performances. I think there were more things for Courtney Cox to do. Inevitably, she didn't get a chance to do it. At one point, she just kind of leaves and then returns at the very end. I'm like, okay. But I just felt the final reveal was so disappointing. Not necessarily because I sort of saw it coming, to a degree. It's more so how they built it up or how they did not build it up. And that's as far as I'm going to go in this non-spoiler review. I was just so disappointed with how they handled that final kill that's supposed to, or that final, moment that's supposed to mean so much. And you get some fun from that reveal, but the sequence itself is just like, oh. And it feels like with every passing sequel, the big sequence at the end gets less interesting, and it doesn't knock my socks off, even less than the last movie, less than the last. It feels like every single film, it gets worse and worse. And so, when a film ends off on that note, you're inevitably going to walk out a bit disappointed. I'm not this hardcore Scream fan that was freaking out with the crowd, but admittedly, I did enjoy some of those, shoehorned nods and Easter eggs for, what can I say? Sometimes I like slop, but it's just, you have this thing at the end that just felt tacked on and shoehorned, almost like they didn't know what to do with it. And it's so unfortunate because this movie, in the first two acts, it does get a lot right. All right, if you want to drop a like on this video, share it. That would be awesome. Leave a comment. Anyone that's a channel member, they just implemented voice replies to your all's comments. So if you're a channel member, I'm going to try to reply to you all with my voice. That's going to be fun. And Scream 7 starts strong, but eventually becomes a mixed bag of ideas. The sequel is packed with solid performances and a few fantastic kills, yet the excitement gets undermined by its constant retreading of familiar plot points and an ending that might go down as the least effective reveal in the franchise yet. Neve Campbell's great, the mother-daughter dynamic carries, but the over-reliance on nostalgia becomes its undoing towards the end. It felt a little choppy, but I will say that one kill in the bar, again, was pretty freaking cool. Thanks for watching. More reviews this weekend. We're talking SAG, PGA, and it's almost Oscar time.